Heading into this 2025 UFL season, the Houston Roughnecks are bringing 3 quarterbacks who may be the most dynamic playmakers in the entire league. We're going to be deep diving into them on this episode. Stay tuned. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Rough 'em Up podcast. I'm your host, Cullen Watkins. I'm so happy you're able to join me because things are getting exciting. As of the recording of this video, the UFL schedule is coming out in a mere matter of days, which means we will know who the Roughnecks are playing and when and where. Now, when you play a team in football, on offense, you need a guy who can sort of take control of the offense and lead the team. That position is called the quarterback. He throws the ball. I know, I'm messing with y'all. I know y'all know what a quarterback is. But do y'all know who the 3 quarterbacks are for the Houston Roughnecks this year? I didn't think so. That's why I'm going to be explaining that in this video here. So, looking at the rosters, the Roughnecks appear to be ahead of the game. General Manager Will Lewis, who is a new general manager for us, he just joined after this past UFL season. He seems to have his players, and he knows what he wants. And with these 3 quarterbacks, one thing is clear that this team is going to want to do in the 2025 UFL season. So we're going to get straight into that. But before we start getting into these quarterbacks, make sure you like and subscribe and comment down below what you're most looking forward to about the Roughnecks this season, or hey, just about the UFL this season. So, but again, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out, helps me in Arlington out a lot. So make sure you do that. So anyways, we have 3 quarterbacks who I think we're going to be keeping. We're not going to be getting rid of them, I don't think, or adding anyone new. I will update this video more than likely if that were the case, but I don't think it is. So the 3 quarterbacks we have Nolan Henderson, signed. Nolan Henderson, Jalan McClendon, and of course, Davius Richard. So now we're going to be starting with Nolan Henderson first. Let's get him out of the way because as of right now, I'm hearing a lot of people are mostly excited about him and are thinking that he's going to be the week 1 starter. Well, obviously, because he's worked through this game plan before, headed by Coach Johnson. So he knows the game plan, he knows the plays. So a lot of people are saying, and I can see where they're coming from, but let me tell you about the 2 other guys that we got before we go saying that Nolan Henderson's going to be the week 1 starter. But Nolan Henderson, if you don't know him, he's 25 years old, out of Delaware. He comes in at 5'11", 205 pounds. When you're thinking about Nolan Henderson, if you haven't seen him play yet, imagine, I may get in trouble saying this, imagine P.J. Walker with a little less edge and a little more raw talent, not so polished, unpolished P.J. Walker. That's how I described Nolan Henderson. He matches up perfectly to P.J. Walker pretty much. P.J. Walker came in at 5'11", 210 pounds. So very similar physical attributes of Nolan Henderson and P.J. Walker. Nolan Henderson is just, like I said, a little less polished than P.J. Walker, but that just shows that Nolan Henderson has a lot of potential. He has a lot of potential. Will this coaching staff unlock it? We'll have to wait and see, but we do know, though, that when Nolan Henderson came in, he signed with the Roughnecks last year, as we know. He was behind Reed Sennett and Jarrett Guarantano. He waited the entire year until, I believe, week 8 was his first really big week where he played against the Stallions. He went 9 for 14, threw for 97 yards, no touchdowns, no INTs, but he rushed for 9 rushing attempts, 34 yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. And then week 9 was his best game against the Panthers, where he threw for 2 touchdowns and 1 interception while also running for 66 yards. So what we saw last year when Nolan Henderson came into the struggling C.J. Johnson offense, we saw playmaking. That's something that we didn't get out of Reed Sinnett or Jarrett Guarantano. We saw the ability of Henderson to get out of the pocket and make throws or run the ball. And it was unique. It really revived the offense. Sure, we didn't win any of those games, but granted, the whole team was just terrible team. We're going to forget about 2024. But going into his second year now with the Houston Roughnecks, he's coming into the same coaching staff and a lot of the same offensive playmakers. A lot of people can argue that Coach Johnson has his guy already. He already knows that Nolan Henderson is going to be his guy. I remember in the Week 10 press conference, Coach Johnson said that, yeah, they found a quarterback in Nolan Henderson. So, will that stand? Who knows? Who knows? But all I do know is that the potential for Nolan Henderson is there. Now, if this offense can get on the right track, and if the coaching staff can get down to business, Nolan Henderson could easily lead this offense and do very well while doing it. We saw flashes of brilliance last year. I love the playmaking ability. I love his play style. I think it's perfect for the spring football game. That even sports writer Emory Hunt said that with Henderson coming out of Delaware, out of college, where he went undrafted. But he said, yeah, Henderson is an athlete, but his game is perfect for the spring football world. He can run. He's a great athlete. He can make throws on the run. He can make a throw on any sort of angle. Sounds good to me. Spring football relies on a lot more playmaking ability, whereas the NFL is definitely more read-based and making really, really tough throws. So Nolan Henderson, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what he does this offseason and what progression he's accomplished. Again, he's 25 years old. The guy is young, so I'm super excited about him. I'll talk about my thoughts about him being a starter later after I talk about all these quarterbacks. But, yeah, we'll see about that. Our next quarterback is, of course, a guy I'm probably most excited about. I'm not going to lie. The oldest quarterback in the room, as well as the physically tallest. Jalan McClendon, age 28, out of Baylor and NC State, but he finished his college career at Baylor. Coming in at an impressive 6'5", 213 pounds. Now, when I think about Jalan McClendon, I followed him a lot. I was a huge fan of him in 2023 XFL when he was with the Las Vegas Vipers. He came in and revived the Las Vegas Vipers offense. He revived it, and he looked so good in Las Vegas. He kind of acted like a Nolan Henderson, but for the Vipers. It was a garbage team, but at the very end, they threw in this young guy who started performing well. He was a dynamic playmaker and offered a lot of spark to the offense. Jalan McClendon and Nolan Henderson are very alike in that regard, but Jalan McClendon is honestly a different player than Nolan Henderson. Of course, first of all, coming in at 6'5", Jalan McClendon, that is so impressive. He's physically gifted. Look at his highlights. When he's running, he looks like a running back out there. Very fast guy. Very fast. He sort of reminds me, I don't like making this comparison, but 2022 New Orleans Breakers, Kyle Sloter. I can sort of see some comparisons there. Of course, the body types are a little bit different, and maybe Kyle Sloter relied less on running the ball, but in terms of physical attributes, height, size, ability to throw the ball, Jalan McClendon sort of does remind me as a ceiling of a New Orleans Breakers Kyle Sloter. So that's a very good thing. After, like I said, McClendon, he went to NC State and Baylor. He went undrafted, whatever. He was with the LA Wildcats in 2020, where he played just a few snaps, nothing too notable there. Then he went to the XFL in 2023, played for the Vipers. Did very, very well there. Let me see his stats. In 2023 with the Las Vegas Vipers, in 4 games he put up 873 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception for a 95.6 passer rating. He also rushed 30 times for 137 yards. This is a dual threat guy. Like I said, he's dual threat. He knows what he's doing when he's on the ground. And that's really impressive for being in such a bad offense. The 5 touchdowns and 1 interception in 4 games. I was really impressed with him. Then, once the merger happened, he went to Coach Reggie Barlow and the DC Defenders, where I believe he only played a few snaps there, but when you're behind Jordan Teamu, okay, you're not going to get much playing time. Then, we traded for him. We traded for Jalan McClendon. And now he's a Houston Roughneck. So, what to make of this? I've been pondering with myself about this. We went out and traded for a quarterback. Is he not going to be the starter? We spent a player on this guy. How can anyone say that he won't be a starter? I don't know. When I think about Jalan McClendon, when he's had a chance to prove himself, he's proved himself. He's looked phenomenal. But he hasn't had a lot of chances to prove himself. So, the question is, in 2025, will his time with the Houston Roughnecks be his chance to have a almost full season of football to prove himself? Fred Keiss and Reggie Barlow said they loved him in DC. Nothing but great things about Jalan McClendon. He's physically gifted. He's proven himself in Las Vegas. I'm just hoping that he has a full shot this season. So, we'll see. I'll cover it a little bit later in the video, but that is Jalan McClendon. He's proven himself. He's the most experienced quarterback in this room, especially when it comes to the spring football game. Now, time for the biggest wild card out of this entire quarterback room. The biggest wild card, and that is Davius Richard. He's 23 years old, fresh out of college at North Carolina Central. He's coming in at 6'3", 220 pounds, which is honestly a sweet spot for a quarterback. But you want to talk about a dual threat guy. This is it. The Davius Richard is probably the most dual threat guy out of this quarterback room. He finished his career at North Carolina Central with 2,575 rushing yards and 44 rushing touchdowns. And then you look at his passing stats, where he finished his career at college with 8,968 passing yards, 73 touchdowns, and only 29 interceptions. Wow. And that's not even his awards. He, in 2023, received the Deacon Jones Trophy, which is essentially I look at it as like the Heisman Award for HBCU football. Shedeur Sanders won it in 2022, so good names on it. He won it. He was the HBCU Legacy Bowl Offensive MVP. He is a FCS All-American, a 2-time MEAC Offensive Player of the Year, and he is a Celebration Bowl Offensive MVP where they beat Jackson State, which was led by Deion Sanders and his son. This is the guy. This is the guy. If we didn't have such a good quarterback room, I would say he's the starter. But he's going to have some competition this year. He's going to have some competition. Now, he did get injured in the HBCU bowl game. I believe that's what it's called. I have it written down there. So he got injured in the bowl game at the very end of his senior year. I believe it was a dislocated ankle. And people say that hurt his draft stock and he was not drafted by a team. Prior to him getting injured in that bowl game, he was projected to be a second or third day round draft pick. Second day or third day draft pick. There we go. Not second or third round. But he was projected to be a draft pick regardless by a NFL team. Sadly, he was not. He was not picked, but he instead signed with us. So I'm seeing this guy. I'm seeing Davius Richard, just loaded, raw talent, who can run the ball. Obviously, he can run the ball. You look at his scouting report, and it's just all about his ability to run the ball. He can run the ball. He can also pass. He's known to be resilient. They said that in his scouting report. And we have this guy. He's how old? Did I say 23 years old? He's 23. He honestly reminds me of a guy who could end up being a Jordan Ta'amu. Dual threat. Physically gifted, of course. Like I said, ability to run the ball, ability to pass, ability to lead. We could have a future Jordan Ta'amu on our team right now. A lot of people say that Davius Richard will find himself in the NFL one day. And we have him on our team. So, really excited about him. I'm really excited about him. This goes into our next segment. And so for this segment, before things get any longer than it needs to be, I'll be going through each quarterback, Henderson, McClendon, and Richards, and sort of thinking about the scenario and what they need to do to win this starting job, and sort of the best case scenario and the worst case scenario for each of these quarterbacks. So starting with Nolan Henderson, honestly, I'm getting the vibes right now that as long as he goes into training camp and he performs mildly well, he'll be the starter for week one. I don't think that the only returning quarterback for this team, he knows Coach Johnson, he was brought back for a reason. I just don't see that translating to him being a backup or a third string. I don't think Nolan Henderson will be a third string. He could be, but I just don't see it happening. He's a returning quarterback. He knows the system. Coach Johnson obviously loves him, as the Week 10 interview after the Memphis Showboats game said. And with Nolan Henderson, will I see him being the only player? No. All three of these quarterbacks will probably see the field. We know this coaching staff likes to do that. With Nolan Henderson, do I see him reaching P.J. Walker heights? No. Not at all. I don't see him being elite. I see him being maybe at most average. If he ends up being above average, amazing. It's just, I think he still has a little bit more room to develop and grow. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't think this coaching staff is the right fit for him to really show himself as a playmaker. I think if he was with A.J. Smith in a run-and-shoot offense or an air raid offense, I think we see the true Nolan Henderson, but I think he's going to be pretty capped in this offense. So that's my overall thoughts about Nolan Henderson. Jalan McClendon, very similar. I do think he has the ability to win the starting job week one. He's proven himself. We've obviously traded for him for a reason. We liked what he's done. Great things were said about him from Reggie Barlow and Fred Keiss. So he has the talent, undoubtedly. He has the physical attributes. It's more of a matter of, will he perform when he needs to in training camp? Will he outperform Henderson and Richard? Maybe he will. I'm personally probably the biggest fan of Jalan McClendon. I saw what he did with a bad offense in Las Vegas. I think he can have that same effect here in Houston. I think his passing is better than Nolan Henderson's. He's more physically gifted than Nolan Henderson. So I think if everything goes to plan, I think McClendon can end up being a very good starter in the UFL. I think he could, and I think the Houston Roughnecks is a perfect chance for him to take the reins of a team from the start and lead them all the way through. I think Jalan McClendon is the probably best option early on in the season. I think he is. Now, will he get that starting job over Nolan Henderson? I don't know. Maybe. All depends on how he performs. Now, probably the biggest wild card, Davius Richard. It's so hard to guess about Davius Richard. Will he win the starting job? I don't think so. I just can't see a rookie outperforming, or honestly, even if he outperforms, I just can't see Davius Richard outplaying Nolan Henderson or Jalan McClendon in training camp. I don't. He hasn't really seen better talent yet, so we don't know how he's going to respond. He could be good enough where that extra level of talent does not matter, and I hope so. That would be awesome. Because Davius Richard, his ceiling is the highest out of this whole quarterback room. But there also is a chance that he doesn't see the playing field. We don't know. But I just have a feeling that that's going to be the case. Kind of reminds me of Caleb Ellaby in 2023 in the XFL. He was talented, he was good, but he was stuck behind Brandon Silvers and Cole McDonald and just never got playing time. But it could also turn out to be like last year, where this Roughnecks team, they play McClendon and they play Henderson. They don't like what they're seeing, so they just switch to Davius Richard, and he ends up putting the league on fire. That's the situation with Davius Richard. I'm super excited about him, and if the Houston Roughnecks want to bring him back for the 2026 season, now we are talking. Now we're talking. I think once he develops, he can be a real threat to the league, but it just may be a little too early right now. But we will hear more as the season gets closer and as this offseason progresses. We'll probably start hearing chirps about who's performing well, who's not. Heck, these three quarterbacks, one of them may be traded if the team doesn't like him. We don't know yet. I know I'm doing this pretty early, but I think after looking at these guys, we got our three. I don't think there's anyone out there that is any better. Clearly, we wanted the dual threat guys, and we got three of them. All three of these guys can run the ball as well as pass the ball effectively. So, all in all, it just depends on who's going to execute in training camp and, most importantly, during the games and the season. But, folks, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me down below what quarterback you are most looking forward to seeing on the field, and who do you think is going to be starting? Tell me down below. Folks, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.